Welcome back, everybody. Episode number 38 of the Plumecast, my weekly gaming news podcast, where I talk about all the things going on within the video game industry. If you guys are new here, this is your first time tuning into the channel, first video you've clicked on, I make daily Xbox-centric news videos, and then I make a weekly podcast where I pretty much cover anything that I kind of want to cover. Lots of Xbox, lots of PlayStation, and hopefully soon this Steam Deck, because I'm going to be hopefully getting that. I mean, they said they're shipping at the end of February, and that's only a couple weeks away, so that'll be cool. Hopefully do some videos on that. But yeah, this is Plumecast. We have some big events to talk about this week, such as PlayStation's acquisition of Bungie. Definitely want to go over that, give you my overall thoughts on that, and how that's going to affect the industry, how it's going to affect PlayStation going forward. I want to talk about an interview between Phil Spencer and Axios. We got some more insight on the deal and Phil Spencer's thoughts and what he's going to have to do with that going forward, and how he's going to have to take on the burden, or not the burden, but he's going to have to take on the insane amount of work with 10,000 more employees coming over and making sure that they have a great workplace environment. Like, that's going to be one of the biggest things there with the Activision Blizzard deal that Microsoft has to get right with that purchase. And some big game announcements, some stuff we've been waiting for to hear that is in development. We'll talk about that as well. But we'll get into that later. Firstly, as always on Plumecast, I do drink a beer. I have not a craft beer this time. One of my favorite beers. I'm a big Guinness guy. I have to get to Ireland one day, go to the Guinness brewery, or at least just drink a Guinness in Ireland. That's like one thing I really want to do once COVID's over. But I got some Guinness extra stout out of the bottle. Definitely different than the regular Guinness. I mean, it has the same sort of taste, but it's like you have to pour it like a regular beer, and it's not as foamy. It's more fizzy. I think I like the just regular Guinness better, but it's still great. I mean, you can't really go wrong with Guinness, and one of my favorite beers of all time. So that's what I'm drinking this week. Let me know what you guys are drinking in the comments below. Love to hear what you guys are into. And it doesn't have to be alcohol. I mean, I enjoy having a beer, talking about video games, having a beer, playing video games, but if you're drinking coffee tonight, if you're drinking some sort of soda that's unique, or even if it isn't unique, it's just a Coke or something, let me know in the comments below. Now, with that being said, I've been playing pretty much the same games as last week. I don't have too much like new stuff to talk about. Rainbow Six Extraction, been playing that. I'm still enjoying it. It's fun, and there's new things that pop up. There's new random mutations in the enemies in levels that I didn't realize was going to happen, and it's just a fun game. It's a fun game to jump into, play a couple of incursions, and then if you don't have any more time, jump out. And it's fun. Like, the gameplay's fun, the shooting's fun, and just the overall premise of it is fun, especially when you put it on higher difficulties. You really have to be strategic. So if you haven't checked that game out yet, I would recommend checking it out. I think people will be surprised of how much they enjoy it if they're into that type of like shooters, if they're into like more strategic style of games like that. It is a good time. And then the second one, Nobody Saves the World, I finished that. I finished the main campaign. I think I'm still going to go back and try to do a couple more things, but that right now is on my game of the year list. I absolutely loved that game. It was so good, and it was on Game Pass day one. Would I have played it if it wasn't on Game Pass? It's hard to say because I have such a big backlog. Looking at the trailers and everything, it's definitely my style of game, so I may have eventually checked it out. Maybe not even this year, but man, I'm so happy I played that right away. It is one of my games of the year right now. I know we're only in February, and this year I'm writing all my games down from the beginning of the year to the end. So when we talk about games of the year next year, I'm going to completely remember all the ones that I loved so much. That's one thing with me is my like, I don't have a bad memory, but I play so many different games that if I played a game in January or February that I absolutely loved, it just kind of gets sometimes foggy once the end of the year comes around, and I have to be reminded, oh yeah, I played that. It was so good, and it was one of the best games I played. So I'm writing this one down so that I don't forget. Now, it may get knocked off the list by the time the year ends, but right now it's 100% in my game of the year list. It's everything about it is really good. Like, the combat's good. the way that you have to choose the different characters and your different like loadouts with that character to make sure you can get through the dungeons is so well done. The dialogue's just funny and quirky. The graphics I absolutely love. The enemies are interesting looking, and it's just pure fun. If you're into like a dungeon crawler and an RPG mixed where you have different leveling up points, like they have the form points and then the XP points, and you have to really kind of think about what character you're using in certain situations, with the type of attacks they're doing, and like the perks you add onto them to make sure that you can get through the dungeons. Like, it's so good. I would highly recommend checking Nobody Saves the World out. So again, two of the same games, but now that I'm done Nobody Saves the World, I may take a slight break from it to try something else next week. And I mean, Crossfire X is coming out next week, so I'm going to, that's on the 10th. Yeah, that's like Wednesday. So I'll be checking that out probably next week. I'm excited for that. I actually pre-ordered it, so I had have all the campaigns, and there's some Game Pass stuff that I want to play as well. So yeah, I'll be jumping into some more stuff next week, and we'll be able to talk about some newer games, because Extraction and Nobody Saves the World have really occupied my time for about the last 3 weeks, I'd say. But yeah, that's what I've been playing. So let's jump in to this week's topics. So we're a couple of weeks now since the Activision Blizzard deal with Xbox, and still so much to think about when it comes to this deal. More information comes out all the time, every week, basically, with if this deal is going to go through. There's going to be reviews of it and all that type of stuff. I mean, it's very likely it's going to go through, especially when you look at the overall video game industry and the fragmentation amongst it, and how Xbox is still going to be just a player amongst many other players with many other studios. They're not going to be even close to owning everything and monopolizing the gaming industry. And we got an interview here from Steven Totillo. He interviewed Phil Spencer, and this is from Axios, and there's some interesting stuff here to talk about. So first of all, this deal itself is the largest deal in video gaming history. It's huge, $69 billion. I think at the end of it, it's like 75 billion or something like that. I see that number continuously being tossed around, but it's a huge number, biggest in video game history. And Phil Spencer has said here that this is nothing like he's ever done before. So it says, Spencer tells Axios that he feels responsible to ensure that the thousands of employees who come on board will feel there is a long-term place for them where they can do their best work in a supported way. And why he's saying that, obviously we know about the stuff going on at Activision Blizzard, the misconduct that has been going on there, and how that's going to have to be fixed. That's going to be probably the main thing that they first start off with this Activision Blizzard deal, just kind of like figuring out how to make sure that the employees have a much better workplace. But that's an estimated over 10,000 employees that are coming to Microsoft. And now Phil Spencer is an incredible executive, an incredible CEO. He's turned around the Xbox ship, but he's just a human being. That's an extra 10,000 employees he's going to have to take in and figure out how they're all going to function within Xbox Game Studios and the Microsoft gaming division. So that'll be super interesting to see how that all happens. He says here, that's something well beyond anything I've ever done. I don't know that I'm equipped to do it, and the responsibility for that definitely hits home. So you can see here, he's definitely realizing after this deal, everything that they have to think about. I mean, he's obviously not going to be alone with doing all of this stuff, but if this deal gets finalized in a year, so 2023, that's not that much time between now and when everything gets finished, where Activision is officially a part of Xbox, for them to completely turn everything around there at Activision Blizzard. So it'll be super interesting to see what happens. And as we know with that studio right now, with Activision specifically, the studios under them, they're working on a bunch of crazy stuff. Like, there was news that came out that they are working on Modern Warfare 2, which is going to be the most ambitious Call of Duty that they've ever made. And honestly, if you were around during the MW2 days back when it came out on the 360, that was the prime time of Call of Duty, where it really started to take over video game culture. It was huge. You had YouTube blowing up. You had people who were instantly just stars on YouTube because of all the videos they were making, and the game itself was like the main game everybody was always talking about at that time. And it's a huge franchise. It's a huge game, MW2, and that they're going to be remaking it for 2023. This may be one of the biggest years in Call of Duty history, honestly, like for just the PR around it, the excitement, the hype, and then potentially the sale. So Xbox is going to be getting this deal, getting Activision Blizzard during probably going to be the most profitable years for the Call of Duty. I really think it's going to be one of the best selling Call of Duties ever. But I mean, that's like so far ahead of ourselves right now. We'll wait and see all that kind of stuff. But if I'm basing it off of the past and what we saw with MW2, the hype that's going to be around that, how successful Modern Warfare was 2019, Warzone, all that type of stuff. So it's going to be crazy. And on top of releasing that game, they're going to be getting those 10,000 employees and trying to figure out how they are going to make sure that they're equipped and that they're responsible in handling that many people. So continues on here saying, though the purchase could make Microsoft the largest employer of game developers in the United States, Spencer pushes back at the idea that his gaming team could set a new industry standard about pay scale, unionization, and more. Phil Spencer saying, I do not feel like we're in a position, assuming this deal gets closed, to start to uniquely on our own shape policies around video games. And I mean, 10,000 extra employees coming in. They already have a ton of employees there. Nothing is going to be drastically changed in like the amount that they're paying their developers and their employees who are working within Xbox Game Studios. I mean, it just doesn't really make any sense because from what I understand right now, and I don't work at Microsoft, obviously. I don't know anybody really who works there. But from what I read online and stuff, and from what I've heard people say, is that Microsoft is a pretty decent company to work for. Like they have a decent, good working environment. And from what we've seen within Xbox Game Studios is that their employees seem pretty happy. We saw Activision Blizzard employees happy that this deal was happening and that they were going to pretty much have a fresh start. And they get paid decently. They have good benefits. So like, I don't expect to see any just sweeping changes to their employee structure and payment and all that type of stuff because of this deal. And at the end of the day, Microsoft's a corporation. They're there to make money. That's their goal. They can be as consumer friendly as possible at that same time, which is what Xbox seems to be doing, which is why I really, really like Xbox these days. And why why my channel is Xbox centric, because I love what they're doing with video games, but they're still at the end of the day there to make money. They don't care really about you personally. If you're not paying into their ecosystem, you're not paying into Xbox, they'll go find somebody who will. So, and that's just reality. And there's really, at the end of the day, that's just life, right? There's nothing nefarious about that. That's just the way the world works, and it's giving us amazing gaming experiences as well. So I don't see any sweeping changes that are going to be coming in just because they purchase Activision Blizzard, who's had scandals and stuff like that. They will obviously fix the culture. That's the thing. They will make sure that they're doing their best so that there will be no more misconduct in what is going on at Activision behind closed doors there. That stuff's hopefully going to be eradicated from the culture of Activision Blizzard, and they're going to be able to implement just a safer, better work environment for everybody. Like that's the hope. That's one of the big things that people were excited about with this purchase initially. It was like, some people were like, okay, well, it's like consolidation of the industry, but at the same time, this is probably one of the best things that could have happened for Activision Blizzard, for their employees, for the culture and everything there. So that's what's going to be the big difference here. And you can see Phil Spencer in this interview knows that's going to be a daunting task. That's going to be something that weighs heavy on their shoulders, because if they fail at that, that will be really bad for Xbox, for Microsoft, for public opinion on them, for public relations, and for the employees as well. So they have a huge task there, but I have faith that they will be able to do some really good stuff there with the culture of Activision Blizzard. Now, when it comes to Bobby Kotick, he also talked about this, but doesn't really say much. And he was asked about CEO Bobby Kotick and leaving without proper accountability and all that type of stuff. Phil Spencer says 100% our focus is on the teams. We know there's work. We have our own work. So what's he gonna say? I mean, what is he gonna say? Bobby Kotick is gonna be gone from Xbox, or from Activision Blizzard once this deal is finished. They've already confirmed that, like, he's gonna be gone. But it's not Phil Spencer's job to lay the law down against Bobby Kotick or anything like that. He's gonna leave with millions and millions of dollars, and more than likely, nothing is going to happen to him. That's generally how these things work. And at the end of the day, I don't know. I guess he has to live with how, because he I believe bought Activision like in the 90s, and then he became the CEO, and then when it became public, I'm not sure exactly how it went down, but he has to live with the fact that when he left there, his legacy on Activision Blizzard, a company that he has been the head of and part of for decades, his reputation is completely scarred. So that's probably the worst thing that's going to happen to him, but he's probably leaving with a multi-million dollars and just going to set off into the sunset and retire. And that's just the reality. So unless there's like some lawsuits against him, who knows, but Phil Spencer isn't going to be the one who's going to hold Bobby Kotick accountable. I mean, they bought the company from him. They have nothing to do with him anymore once it goes through. I mean, that's the way I see it. It's not up to him to punish him. And then it goes on here to say, and how he feels. So he talked about how he felt about the deal, and that only seemed possible because of allegations of misconduct sunk Activision's stock price. And Phil Spencer says there was no thermometer that said, oh, okay, now we can afford it as a company. That was never part of the conversation. And we know with this deal, from what we understand, is Activision approached a lot of people, and then they approached Microsoft in November, and they worked on the deal, and that's what happened. Now, realistically, if the allegations and the misconduct sunk Activision's stock price, any smart businessman looks at that, and if they were in the water for an acquisition, that's when you strike. Like, that would be a smart thing to do. If they were sitting there and they were like, I know this may sound bad, but if they're sitting there and they're looking at what's going on with the business, seeing that there's a lot of bad things going on, the stock price is falling, and you're looking for an acquisition, and you're like, well, I can get the best deal I'll ever be able to get on this company. I mean, hey, that's when you go in and you make that deal. And that's probably did have a part to do with this. I mean, Bobby Kotick was looking at the stock price falling. He wanted to sell. He wanted to sell because he wanted to get away with as much money as possible before it continued to fall. And who knows what other issues were going to come out in the future? Who knows what other issues internally that are at Activision Blizzard, especially with like specifically the Call of Duty cycle. We know that Call of Duty Vanguard did not meet expectations with sales and everything, and Call of Duty seems to kind of be falling off, which I think will be reinvigorated with MW2. But he was like, you know what? We got to sell now so I can get as much money. And on the other side of the business, you had Microsoft coming in and saying, well, we are trying to grow a subscription model. We need as many strong IPs as possible. Call of Duty is one of the strongest IPs in video game history. Let's try to get a good deal on this. And then boom, the deal was created. And I think for video games, it's probably the best thing that could have happened with Activision Blizzard, in terms of it's better that it went to Xbox instead of Tencent. Better that it went to Xbox instead of Google, Amazon. If Sony could afford it, it's better that it went to Xbox, at least for now, because Sony still does their console exclusives and forces you to buy their box. So from a consumer perspective, Activision Blizzard being acquired by Microsoft, I think, is the best thing that could have happened because of all of the stuff with their ecosystem. So it goes on here to talk about how after the ZeniMax Bethesda gaming deal in 2021, the board of Microsoft, on the day that we got, so it says, I'll just read the quote. The board of Microsoft, on the day that we got approval for ZeniMax, asked what was next, which is crazy. They just spent $7.5 billion and they're already like, hey, Phil, what do you want to buy next? So it was funny because I always thought that, like, what's next acquisition season, all this stuff after the Bethesda deal was just like, you know, fans getting excited and being hyped up. But literally Microsoft was doing the same thing, trying to figure out what they could do next to continue to expand and grow. to bolster their portfolio. And one of the big things he says here is that there's always a constant conversation about mobile and casual, and they just knocked that right off the list. So this is probably one of the major reasons why they bought Activision Blizzard, which is what people have been talking about. What I mentioned as well when this first happened was that they got King, which is huge in mobile with 240 million monthly users. And I would guess that if King wasn't a part of this deal, Microsoft may not even be interested in Activision Blizzard. I think King is like the key thing there as to why they went through this purchase. So I mean, like, yeah, it's crazy that out of all of the IPs that are coming with Activision Blizzard, an IP like Candy Crush is probably the most influential. Now, for the bottom line to sum all of this interview up, Phil Spencer says, the longest goal for us is do creators on our platform feel like they have the best opportunity to reach the maximum number of players with the maximum creative diversity that they need. And that just all ties back to what we're seeing Xbox doing with the ecosystem and being able to reach as many people as possible no matter where they play. And from what we've seen so far with Phil and the Xbox team allowing their studios to work kind of independently, kind of like yeah, they're owned by Microsoft. Yeah, they get all of the resources, all the tech, and all the help that they get from that being owned by such a massive company, but they're still independent with their creative ideas. And I hope that never changes. You know, it's a hope that I'm still, you know, Phil Spencer has proven that it's not going to change for now, but the future can always just kind of adjust everything. And I think that will be the only thing that can make a purchase like this bad, is if we see what we've seen in the past with the big corporations and forcing certain types of things to be made to make as much money as possible, and not giving that creative freedom where we can get new ideas, new IPs, like a game like Grounded, like Sea of Thieves from Rare, just like even the one from the Ninja Theory that failed, the Brawler, that as well, Bleeding Edge, like something like that. Even though it failed, at least they were still backed to go ahead and try that creative idea. And I think that game was actually pretty good. It just didn't do well in terms of sales and people playing it and stuff, which is unfortunate because there is something with that game and they could have made it great. But at the end of the day, this is going to be very interesting to see how all this stuff plays out with the Activision Blizzard, and I'm super excited. And the fact that MW2 is going to be the Call of Duty in 2023, or I guess the end of 2022 going into 2023, man, that's even more exciting for this deal to go through. And I hope that's day one on Xbox Game Pass. So jumping over here to probably the craziest thing that happened this week, or the craziest thing that happened this week, and I'm sure all of you already know what it is, and it is that PlayStation purchased Bungie for $3.6 billion. Now, Bungie, the original developers behind Halo, brought that franchise to life, which is actually hilarious to think about how Bungie went from Microsoft to independent, then to PlayStation. Just nuts to think how the transition in the video game industry, how with that developer. So they bought Bungie $3.6 billion, and what they get with that obviously is their talent, their resources, their employees, and the one IP, which is Destiny, which is a massive IP with lots of players every day that log in. I think there was like 1 million players this week that played or something like that. And then the expansion is coming, and that's going to just reinvigorate that game. Destiny has actually been such an interesting success because Destiny, when it first came out, the first one, there were a lot of issues with it. And I think people didn't really enjoy it as much as they're enjoying Destiny 2, but Destiny 2 has just been absolutely crazy, and they're going to continue pushing that game forward, and it's going to always have just huge numbers. It's a really, really good games as a service game for that specific model, and PlayStation knows this, and I think that is the main reason why they went out and purchased Bungie for $3.6 billion. So a lot of people are wondering if this was like a pushback towards the Activision Blizzard acquisition, and it obviously wasn't. These deals take months to happen. They're obviously talking about this deal far before the Activision Blizzard deal was happening. And the ironic thing, though, with that being said, is that we did hear that the Activision Blizzard deal started in like November, and then we got the announcement just at the end of January. So that one was actually really fast for a much larger sum of money. So, but in general, I mean, these deals take a very long time. So this wasn't like a pushback. There's a lot of other reasons why PlayStation bought Bungie, and I personally think for PlayStation, this is a good purchase. I think this was a very, very smart purchase. Now, there's a lot of different opinions you can take on this because there are people coming out and saying that they vastly overpaid for Bungie. So there was an article here from Yahoo Finance, and the analyst here says that, and just to compare and contrast, EA bought Respawn about 3 or 4 years ago for 700 million with 400 developers, and those guys generate 700 million a year in revenue. Bungie does about 200 million in revenue, so I think Sony vastly overpaid. I think this was a statement that we're not going to let Microsoft get ahead of us, so we'll just buy something out of desperation. It's not really a deal that makes a whole lot of sense to me. The others do. So that's a financial analyst. You don't know how deep, like, I don't know, that they go into the gaming industry or how deep this guy goes in. He could be very well versed in the gaming industry, but that's what the finance people are saying about this deal. Now, I agree that it was overpaid. Like 3.6, Bungie isn't worth $3.6 billion. They just aren't. I mean, they have one IP, and that IP, like they say here, generates $200 million in revenue. Just the numbers don't make sense. They did overpay. But we're in a time right now where everyone's overpaying. Like if you're a developer, you want to sell now. Like you're at the top right now. Everyone is paying way more than they should for some of these companies. And that's kind of what happened here with Bungie. Bungie probably smelled the money and how much more money they could get today if they were to sell to Sony, and that's probably what happened, because we know that they were talking, like Microsoft was talking to them, they were in talks to try to sell to somewhere, and Sony probably just came in and just said, okay, 3.6 billion, probably higher than any other offer that they got, and that's why they're currently right now part of PlayStation Studios. Now we know with this deal here, everything's staying multi-platform. Like that was one of the main things in the press release about this purchase. Right on Bungie's website, is they said that they're pretty much just working independently. They're just owned by PlayStation, but all of their content coming out now and in the future and everything is going to be multi-platform. So it's not about taking content away and locking it to the PlayStation platform, which brings me to something that, I mean, I've been saying this for over a year now, even longer, even I don't know how long. A lot of people have been saying this. And it is that console exclusivity itself is a losing, dying model. It's antiquated. It's for the dinosaurs. And if you're continuing to try to do console exclusivity as PlayStation was doing, or we thought they were going to continue to do, they were going to end up losing. And that's what they see as well. I mean, it's obvious. They probably were planning on moving away from console exclusivity for a very long time now. There's just so much when it comes to this business. They're probably firstly thinking about how much more can we squeeze out of our consumers. I was going to say another word ahead of that, but how much more can we squeeze out of our consumers and make them think that our magical plastic box is the best and you have to have it to play all of these things. And it's the only way you'll ever for the rest of time be able to play these games. And two, how can we make this transition without pissing off our loyal customer base, our rabid fanboys that think that the magical plastic box makes them superior gamers? So they're thinking along those lines, but they know that in order to compete in the next 10 years, in 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, they're going to have to transition out of that antiquated model. And I find it funny because whenever people talk about this, whenever I'm just talking with friends, things like that, talk about console exclusivity, it's gone, like it's going away. People always bring up revenue now, revenue 5 years ago, how much money PlayStation is making, all that type of stuff. When, yes, of course, PlayStation today is making way more revenue, and they'll probably make more revenue for a while, and they may always make more revenue. If they can transition properly into what Xbox is doing with their ecosystem, they may always be making more revenue than Xbox, just because they have, in general, a stronger brand. Like that's just the fact. PlayStation is a stronger brand. They've been around longer. They have more fans and a bigger fan base. But in 10 years from now, if PlayStation was still doing console exclusivity and that was their main selling point and they were trying to push their platform, you had to buy a PlayStation to play their games, Xbox, I would almost guarantee would be making significantly more revenue than PlayStation by putting their games in multiple platforms. PC being the main one, day one, and making tons of revenue off of people signing up for a subscription and people just going out and purchasing it on Steam. I mean, we've seen games like Halo, games like Forza, how much money they have generated from Steam purchases on day one, and then how that has grown Xbox Game Pass. So they're getting all of these different revenue streams, where with PlayStation first party games, their only revenue stream they're getting is from somebody buying their game if they own the box, which just logically makes sense that that's going to make less revenue than putting your game out to millions and millions and millions and millions more people who are going out and buying it. So obviously PlayStation sees this, Jim Ryan sees this, and he even says here after this purchase that PlayStation will expand beyond its historic console heartland. Saying here, I've been on record talking about increasing the size of the PlayStation community and expanding beyond our historic console heartland. This can take many forms, and definitely one of the main ones is the ability for the wonderful games that we've been making over the past 25 years to be enjoyed in different places and played in different ways. We are starting to go multi-platform. You've seen that. He adds here, philosophically, this isn't about pulling things into the PlayStation world. This is about building huge and wonderful new worlds together. What he's saying here is, in due time, PlayStation games are going to be day one on PC as well, and potentially through streaming. Exactly what Xbox is doing. They're going to be going that direction. They know that's what makes them, that's going to be making them the most money in 10 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever it is. Because these CEOs, these companies, they don't think in present. They don't just think in today. They think of what can we do to stay relevant and on top in the future. You know, PlayStation always wants to be number one. You know, Sony always wants to be on top for gaming revenue. And in order to do that, they're going to have to make these adjustments and these changes. So that's great, though. Here's the thing. They're following Xbox. And if we look at the video game industry from like the beginning since Xbox entered, everyone's followed them in terms of the innovation, but Xbox has never been with their innovation on top in terms of the money making side of things. But you look at like the original Xbox when they came out with Xbox Live, even putting the hard drive in the console, everyone followed that. 360, the dashboard, all that type of stuff, the achievements, the friends list, the party chats, everyone followed that. Now we're looking at right now with Xbox Game Pass subscription service, and PlayStation again is following in those footsteps because they know that's what's going to make them the most money. And hey, if they make that change and they do it properly, they will probably always still be on top. Well, I say that because of how strong their fan base is, but Xbox does have a lot more IPs now, so it'll be interesting. But they very well could still be number one in terms of revenue if they make the proper changes. And people are going to be like, oh, they're only doing it because Xbox is doing it. They're following Xbox, whatever. At the end of the day, this is a great thing for the consumer. This makes me extremely happy to see because, yeah, I'm an Xbox centric channel. Yes, I prefer Xbox. Yes, I absolutely love Xbox, but I play on everything. And I don't care that PlayStation is just copying Xbox. If they give us a consumer friendly service like Xbox Game Pass and their ecosystem, I am extremely happy and I will support it 100%. And so I hope that's what happens. I hope it's not just a half-assed thing. We know they're going to be announcing Project Spartacus, and that'll be interesting to see what they do. I'm all for them like announcing tiers with backwards compatibility stuff and then a higher tier with like their first party games, and that includes everything. Like, sure, why not? Depending on the pricing. I love backwards compatible games. I love older games, so I'm definitely good with that as well. But I'm excited to see what they're going to do, how they're going to make this transition, and how fast they're going to make this transition. The one thing is their consoles are still selling so well that they can kind of take a little bit more time, not like rush into it right away, but they're going to make the jump. And besides the expanding beyond console thing, the other thing that they are also buying IPs for was interesting to read about was on their Q&As during their earnings call. They said CFO Hiroki Totoki says here that it's not just for the gaming area, but the multi-using of IP and merchandising of IP, like a game title may be put into movies. Bungie wants to nurture the IP they have in a multi-dimensional manner, and that's their hope. For that, we believe we can help that. We have Sony Pictures, Sony Music, and Bungie can leverage our platform so that their IP can flourish and grow big. And that makes a ton of sense. We know Sony is huge into the other areas of movies and music and all the type of stuff. So for them, that makes complete sense. Take Bungie, make a TV show. We're even seeing Xbox expand into that with like the Halo TV show, which I can't wait to see. And when it comes to just other reasons why I think this was a good purchase, I mean, the big stuff here is that they haven't had a major multiplayer game in a very long time. And you have a company like Bungie coming in who's instantly going to be able to do that for them. They have no real games as a service games that they have out there, which are the big money makers within the industry. And with that being said, Sony actually laid out their plan for first party software growth. And one of the biggest things they mentioned was live service games, making 10 of them, launching 10 of them by March 2026. And Bungie will be a great addition to help them do that. Now, these live service games, as they said, going beyond console, they're most likely going to be available everywhere, PC, or at least PC. Let's put it that way. They're going to be available in another location than the PlayStation console, which I hope that happens. And if it does, again, that's just a great thing. They also said here that they want to grow games and franchises beyond just PlayStation consoles. I mean, we already talked about this, and they're already putting stuff like God of War on PC, Uncharted, Horizon, Days Gone. So they've already ventured into that area with older games, but I foresee them doing this day one with their first party titles. And they want to also double their first party game revenue by fiscal year 25. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is by making more games and putting them on multiple devices. They're not going to be able to double their first party game revenue by continuing what they're doing right now. So Bungie is going to help them do that. Will they be able to make 10 live service games by March 2026? Probably not. I mean, PlayStation's obviously hoping that they're going to be able to make one, maybe two. By then, that's going to be just as crazy popular as Destiny 2 is. And they're going to be able to just rake in the money with the live service stuff. Putting it out maybe even for a small fee, maybe even for free, but then adding on those microtransactions and subscription stuff, that what rakes in all of the money. So again, yeah, they overpaid for Bungie, but for their vision, what they're trying to do, it makes sense. It does definitely go against what I guess people have been saying they're known for, which is growing things organically or buying studios that they have worked with previously for a lot of projects before bringing them on officially as like a full-time PlayStation studio. So this is the future, and we're walking right into it, and it's an exciting time to see how it's all going to play out. All right, finally, to end off this week's show, we have some very exciting information, something that I think like we all knew it was coming, at least hopefully, or we were hoping it was coming soon. And that is Rockstar Games has finally revealed that they are actually working on Grand Theft Auto 6, or the next Grand Theft Auto in the series. Putting out this tweet, many of you have been asking about a new entry in the Grand Theft Auto series. With every new project, our goal is always to significantly move beyond what we've previously delivered. We're pleased to confirm that active development for the next entry in the series is underway. We look forward to sharing more as soon as we are ready. So please stay tuned to the Rockstar Newswire for official details. On behalf of our team, we thank you for all your support. Cannot wait to step into the future with you. This is huge. I mean, Grand Theft Auto is obviously one of the biggest gaming franchises ever. They still are releasing Grand Theft Auto 5, coming out with the next generation update on March 15th. There's so many people that play it online, stream it, just are always within the system of Grand Theft Auto and the social club and all that type of stuff. It's a massive game. And think about GTA 5. It's crazy because it's originally released back on the PS3, Xbox 360 era, went to the PS4, Xbox One, now coming to the Series X and PS5. So it's spanned 3 generations of consoles, and not many games can say that they've done that, but they have. And another one, I guess, would be like Skyrim. So it's crazy. And that they're working on a new one, that's very exciting. And who knows when this will be. This may be like an end of generation game though, which was like the same with GTA 5, because that game released right at the end of the Xbox 360 era and then came out again on the Xbox One. So I feel like that's the same thing that's going to happen, maybe a little bit earlier, because I guess we are only in year 2. Let's say this generation goes to what, 2027, 2028 potentially, I'd say, depending on how the things go. But I mean, these consoles are far more powerful this generation at launch than last generation. Last generation, they were already like super underpowered. super anemic for what they were. I'm surprised they even lasted as long as they did, which they didn't really, because they had the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X to kind of make up for it. Especially the OG Xbox One, like that thing was finished halfway through that generation. With the One S then came out, and that was a little bit better. And I mean, the One X was a great console. So yeah, I don't know. These consoles though are starting at a better point. So will we see a pro version of these consoles? I'm skeptical that we will see a pro version of these consoles. I know we're kind of getting off into a tangent here, but when it comes to the people think that we're going to get a mid-cycle refresh, and I'm very skeptical that we will this generation, especially with the AI learning, machine learning and stuff that's really going to help upscaling games without having to put more power on the actual consoles themselves. And we haven't seen developers really touch any of that stuff yet. And we're into the year 2, and we'll start, I think, seeing that maybe in like year 4 or 5. Usually that's what happens. Like developers really start to utilize all the tools that are available deeper midway to closer to the end of the generation. That's when you start seeing the best games. So the fact that the Series X specifically is already as powerful as it is at launch, I will be shocked if we got a real like power upgrade for a mid-cycle refresh. We'll probably get a slimmer version. That always happens, and sure, why not? I mean, the Series X is already such a great form. It's compact for the power in there, so all that's very interesting to see how that's going to roll out. But GTA 6, I mean, that's going to be coming out closer to the end, and it's exciting that it's started. Now, with that being said, we got some news about some Activision Blizzard stuff and Call of Duty, and I talked about this earlier in the podcast about how Call of Duty MW2 is going to be the most ambitious game in Call of Duty franchise history. I mean, they probably said that almost every year, but I can see them really wanting to go hard with MW2, especially because of the report we have here. Activision, we got some numbers, and Call of Duty Vanguard sales were down from Black Ops Cold War, and COD Warzone engagement is down, both of these year over year. And that's something that the board, the investors are going to be super annoyed about, pissed off about. They're going to want to see that increase, because that's the thing with Call of Duty that we really know about what Activision has done with this franchise, and why there's been just so much deterioration within Activision with creating games, new IPs. It's because they know that Call of Duty is the moneymaker. Every single year they have to make more than the previous year, even though the previous year they set records. They're the best-selling game, and that's a lot of pressure to come down to try to do that. And that's all because the investors, the board of directors, the executives, they're all about the bottom line, and they know that Call of Duty will increase that bottom line with a lot less risk than putting out any new IP. I mean, we see this trickle down into the gaming industry overall with like the PlayStation stuff we heard about with the Days Gone, and how they didn't want to make a Days Gone 2, and they just put people onto continuously putting out more Last of Us content because that's like a guaranteed huge moneymaker. And that's the biggest fear in the industry, in my opinion, right now, with the arms race type of thing. Luckily with Xbox, like I've said multiple times, that until we see differently, I'm going to continue to be happy about what they're doing, is that they are allowing their devs to be creative. So hopefully that doesn't change, but it could always change. But with PlayStation acquiring Bungie, are they just going to keep doubling down on Destiny, or are they going to allow Bungie to come up with a new idea? All that's going to be seen in the future, so we don't know yet. But from what we've heard so far, from how they run their things, probably they're just going to be continuing going really hard on Destiny, which guarantees them increase in revenues because people play that all the time. So again, Activision, they're down year over year with their numbers. Therefore, they're going to have to keep trying to increase their numbers. And MW2 is going to be the next one, most ambitious. I think that will definitely help them bounce back. So, and besides that, we also got a quote from Bobby Kotick here talking about just what's going to be going forward with Activision in the future. Just going to try to open this in a new tab so you guys can see it fully. What he says, "I'm so incredibly Proud of our teams for their commitment and passion as we continue to engage the world through epic entertainment in 2021, said Bobby Kotick, CEO of Activision. As we look to the future with Microsoft's scale and resources, we will be better equipped to grow existing franchises, launch new potential franchises, and unlock the rich library of games we have assembled over 40 years. Our 370 million players around the world and workplace excellence remain our focus. For investors, our recently announced transaction is the culmination of 3 decades of providing superior shareholder returns. So there you have it. Is talking directly to the shareholders because they're obviously been sold, and hopefully what he's saying here does happen, that they're going to be able to unlock the rich library of games and IPs, and we're going to get a bunch of cool stuff from Microsoft. And Phil Spencer's already seemed all exciting about that. And going forward, I mean, we got to get those platformers out there. We got to get the Spyro. We got to get the Crash Bandicoot. Like, they could do so much with that. It's crazy to think about. So I'm really looking forward to it. I know those are like more of the known IPs that people want to see. But honestly, out of all of those IPs that they have, those two are the first ones that pop into my mind that I just want to see more, because I love 3D platformers. I've always loved 3D platformers, and we just don't get that many great ones these days, right? We had Psychonauts 2, which was incredible, one of my favorite games last year, and I want to see more of that kind of stuff. Like, I remember back on like the PS2 and the OG Xbox days, like one thing PlayStation did really good in that generation were the 3D platformers. Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank. And now all we get is Ratchet and Clank. I mean, we don't get any more Sly, which I love. We don't get any more Jak and Daxter. We don't get any more from Xbox. Like, it'd be cool if they brought back Blinks. We still haven't gotten Banjo and Kazooie. I don't know why they aren't trying to get someone to make Banjo and Kazooie. It's just that one's a little mind-boggling, but we'll see. I think that this, like we talked about, this acquisition is good overall, and I think Xbox hopefully will unlock all of these IPs going forward. But that's going to end that here, and we'll end off today's show. So a great show. Thank you guys for stopping by again. Thank you guys for watching the weekly videos, and I'll be back again next week for some more stuff. And yeah, I mean, as always, let me know what you guys think about all of this stuff in the comments below. I love to hear your opinions and what your thoughts are on the Bungie thing. I mean, that's the main big thing that happened this week. So let me know what you guys think about this. If you think it's good or bad for Sony, you think they overpaid, all that type of stuff. And I will catch you guys later in the next video.
Bye.